Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfries, back with some malicious compliance. Today's episode is gonna be a banger and I know you're gonna love this one. I want to continue with this experiment until the end of the week to best understand the YouTube algorithm, so if every single person who's watching could press the like button right now, it would help me more than I can explain and it would help me deliver better content every single day. Now sit back, relax and enjoy some malicious compliance. I have an employee who kicks butt and works hard. He has never failed to exceed the goals that I've set for him, and he is setting records for the amount of value that he is bringing to the company. He has an incredible work ethic and almost never takes a break. I actually have to remind him a few times a week that he needs to clock off for lunch, and he begrudgingly does it. A few weeks ago, one of my bosses came downstairs and saw him checking Twitter. He got laid into and had his job threatened, and then I got caught upstairs for 20 minutes of being yelled at. I was told that I need to crack the whip and make sure we were getting the amount of work that we are paying him for. I took this personally. This was my best worker, and if my boss had have come to me first, I would have explained why I don't micromanage him. I went back down and pulled him aside for a quick meeting. I told him that if anyone came down while he was looking at social media, Reddit, etc., and asked him if this was work related, his answer should be no. I'm on my 10-minute break, and then he needed to stop working for the next 9 minutes. Even if he wasn't on his phone, he should immediately take a 10-minute break whenever my boss walked in. We are legally entitled to 2 10-minute breaks every shift, and the company allows us to take them whenever we want. So instead of him using his phone for 1 minute every couple of hours, he was taking 2 fully paid breaks. My boss realized what was happening pretty quickly, and to his credit, he called both of us upstairs and apologized for trying to micromanage us without taking into account the individual working styles. He was promised that his job was safe, and I was promised that I'd be in charge of my team as long as we continued to perform at the level we had been. This wasn't some fairy tale happy ending where the boss is revealed to be the good guy all along. I think it was good of him to apologize, and I'm glad he pulled back. But he is not a great boss. He's usually not that bad, but he's not the kind of guy who anyone particularly likes working with. The company recently grew big enough that they hired a CFO, and this incident was one of several warning signs that he's turning it into a toxic work environment. I am actively looking for a new job. Just like in so many of these stories, if the boss didn't stick his nose in business that wasn't his own, then this would have never happened. It's the manager's job to manage their employees, and whatever behaviors they may be displaying, both good and bad, if noticed by anyone, especially upper level management, should be raised with their manager in the first instance. It's one thing to make a passing comment to someone about something, and it's another thing entirely to stand there berating them over a situation that you don't understand. I'd like to think this manager took it as a lesson for future encounters with people, but he sounds like the kind of manager who loves to put other people down to make himself feel good. I, a 26-year-old male, started my first job after college 3.5 years ago. I was hired with a group of 25 people, and I used to run a lot of clubs in college and had this I need to finish my job as best as I possibly can attitude when I first joined. I was good at what I did and put in considerably more work than the other people who joined with me. Another huge motivation behind this was that since the initial pay wasn't good enough, I wanted to impress with my work and get a really good raise at the end of the year. So throughout the year, I kept working late hours, stayed at the office for 10 hours plus on a regular, and the way our work dynamic was that I was the only one under my manager and we were both supposed to share the work on the projects. And slowly and steadily, my manager started noticing that I'm taking up extra stuff and he started offloading his work onto me too. Now, I was essentially doing my own job and half of his jobs as well, and had to reduce the time that it took to do these things by at least 40%. I was stressed and overworked, but was getting exceptional weekly ratings, so I felt it was worth it. How naive I was. Appraisal time came and I went into the one-on-one with my manager. This guy tells me that while I have one of the best performance ratings in the company, they're not allowed to give freshers a huge raise, and I received the same raise that others who joined with me did, doing the bare minimum. I was pissed. I told my manager that since the company has declared me average, that he should expect average performance from now on. He laughed there, thinking that I was kidding. Well, I wasn't. From the next day onwards, every task that would be done in 2 hours now needs 8. I won't stay in the office for more than the agreed upon 8.5 hours, won't finish lunch up quickly to get some more work done, won't do any of your job for you, And my attitude was like, oh, the client is asking for this document that I prepared in an hour? Sorry, an average person wouldn't do it in less than 4, so I'm going to keep it with me while I take the next 3 hours to figure out how to update the table of contents. Which is 3 clicks, by the way. Oh, there's something you need to ask for after work hours? Sorry, it'll have to wait till tomorrow. Complaints started coming in quickly about the delays in deliverables. My manager started spending a lot of time frustrated because he wasn't very good to begin with, and now I wasn't taking up his workload. I spent the entire year working 2 hours a day while I spent the rest of the time listening to music, browsing Reddit, and watching him struggle. I left at the end of the year for a job that paid 3 times the salary. Some details of our projects get published online, and last I checked, this guy was running 7 to 8 months behind on some of the projects, and from what I heard from some friends of mine in the company, he didn't get any raise last year. You know, I get that in some companies and some business sectors, you may not get rewarded for the hard work that you put in. But to be fully acknowledged that you are one of the best performing people in your entire company, and then basically getting told that it doesn't matter how hard you work, we're not going to reward you in any way, that's something that's not good enough and just seems like a complete cop-out from the manager. A surefire way to get really high quality hardworking employees to leave is to burn them out, not recognize their hard work, and then reward the people who do absolutely no work. I honestly think this manager, and quite frankly the company, got what was coming to them, and by the sounds of it, have lost a really good employee as a result. I was a service tech who did scheduled calls to customers' homes. We generally had anywhere from 8 to 12 jobs a day as we were swamped. As one of the lead techs, I was also assigned jobs that most of the other techs had no training to fix. On this particular day, it began snowing and icing, and the road conditions began worsening. No issue normally, as long as I could just avoid a few streets in towns that have steep hills. I had a job in a newer area, and when I get to the neighborhood, I notice the house is at the bottom of a pretty steep hill on a dead-end street. I park at the top of the hill and message my supervisor and tell him that I recommend we reschedule the job as my truck would never make it back up the hill. He must have been having a bad day because he goes off on me and demands I just do the job. The road conditions were not that bad. I took a photo of the hill and sent it back, but he still demanded I do the job. I would also note that my truck is vital to the work I do, and I could not have walked to the home due to the equipment in the truck that is required. Cue the malicious compliance. I save the messages and send it to my personal account. Getting to the customer's home was no issue, and I had them up and running in under 30 minutes. I followed my supervisor's demands and did the job, but leaving was another issue. I could not get to the top of the hill with the truck. I quickly gave up once I determined it was hopeless. I messaged my supervisor saying that I'm stuck at the bottom of the hill and unable to get my truck up it. My other scheduled jobs will have to be reassigned and a tow truck called to get me out. My supervisor tells me to try harder, and it's not that hard to drive on icy conditions. I tell him that at this point it feels unsafe to do so, and from this point on, I feel like I could damage the homeowner's property. I told him to see the prior messages about the hill being too steep and my requests for it to be rescheduled being denied. At this point, the supervisor calls me and I confirm that I will not be attempting to further climb the hill. He grumbles, but knows me well enough to not push me, so tells me to hang on. I wait 45 minutes and he shows up in his work truck, which is much smaller and lighter than mine. He doesn't even attempt to go down the hill, but walks down. He tries for a while to get my truck up himself, but then accidentally hits a mailbox. He then gives up and calls a tow truck. With wintry conditions, I wait another 3 hours for a truck to arrive. When they do arrive, they also get stuck at the bottom of the hill. I'm not sure why they even tried going down it. Now me and a tow truck are stuck at the bottom of the hill, and this time the wait is even longer. They needed to bring in a specialty truck, which turns out doesn't have a long enough chain to reach us at the bottom of the hill. We even wait longer for a third tow truck to arrive. Overall, I arrived at the customer's house around 9:30 AM and finished at about 10 AM. I then do not get up the hill until about 7 PM. 9 hours I was at the bottom of the hill with my truck running while I played online on my laptop. Instead of working in the wintry conditions outside, I was toasty in the cab. The one thing that you can't say from this story is that the manager did not bring this upon himself. I mean, he was clearly told that there was no way that this guy was going to get back up the hill, and instead insisted that he go down the bottom of the hill, knowing full well that he wasn't going to get back up. And then the arrogance for him to rock up, attempt to get back up the hill and fail miserably just tops this off incredibly. He was supposed to be this big hero that was gonna rock up and save the day and get back up the hill that was supposedly easy to get back up, and instead made a fool out of himself and gave this employee basically a full day off. Stories like this are just malicious compliance at their best. Back in my senior year of high school, or my last year of high school, I had an amazing English teacher. He was very engaging and passionate about what he did, and it was a great class to have first period. Well, the class is all seniors, and it was the end of the year and finals were coming up, and I think you know how that goes. Our school schedule for finals was 2 periods and classes per day for 3 days. The administration, wary of senioritis and kids skipping class, warned the teachers that they must hold class on the day of their scheduled final and that they cannot tell their students that they don't need to show up. So my teacher, the week before finals, gets up in front of the whole class and says, "For our final, we will be watching a movie." Now, the administration has told me that I'm not allowed to tell you that you don't have to show up to this final. He stares at us and pauses for a few seconds and says, "So? I will not do so." Needless to say, I got some extra Z's that finals week. Man, where were these teachers when I was in high school? All the teachers that I actually had for classes were so stuck up and would never have done something like this. Like, don't get me wrong, there were definitely some great teachers at school and some pretty laid back ones, especially some of the ones who had recently finished their degrees. But as luck would have it, I would always end up having the teachers that had been in the job for like 20 or 30 years and were stale and getting towards the end of their career. My own personal problems aside though, this reminds me so much of the School of Rock song Stick It to the Man. And I completely digress, but wasn't that such a good movie? I feel like I haven't seen that for years. I think this story has just sorted out what I'm going to be doing tonight. So after posting another story of mine, a deep memory from another perfect bit of malicious compliance sprung to mind. I was a young guy, new to the industry, and I used to work maintenance in a factory, but after a few years, I switched to replace the retiring machine workshop guy, technically a different department, but still closely related. To keep the place running, I'd occasionally still do the odd maintenance jobs, fix a bent thing here, replace some bolts there, just little things, and only when they were more important than whatever else I was doing. For some reason, the maintenance manager took offense to this. Apparently, if I'm doing a job for the shop floor, I can't just go and help someone when they ask. I need to go and ask a manager, meaning come and ask my permission and I'll decide if you're too busy. Honestly, the guy was just a control freak. It was nothing to do with issue reporting since I still did that anyway. It was that doing it his way was more important than doing it right. So this wasn't out of character. I basically ignored this and he was never around to ask, and often in the time it took to find him, I'd be done with the job. So cue several more talkings to when he catches me doing jobs, and eventually he threatens to take it further if I keep disobeying this order. Then, the obvious solution clicks. A few days later, he comes storming up to me while I'm fixing something, thoroughly peed, and he begins ranting at me about how he's told me time and time again that I need to ask. That clearly I can't listen, and that if I can't listen, I shouldn't be doing this job. I tell him, actually, I did ask, and he says, "No you didn't." I said in reply, "I didn't ask you, I asked my managers." He says it's fine and not to bother him by asking about every little job, so just get on with it. Now, is there anything else or can I get back to work? The machine is stood after all. He stood there for a few seconds, starting the first syllable of a word and doing half a hand gesture before cutting himself off, mouth opening and closing like a goldfish, and eventually just storming off, pretending that it's all okay. Being new and young, I'd get pushed around a lot, get stuck doing the bad jobs that wasn't mine to do, that sort of thing. This was the turning point when I realized the polite F off with a reason to back it up does wonders. And funny enough, I don't get the bad jobs anymore. For the life of me, I cannot work out why any sane person would get annoyed at one of their employees for doing too much work. The only thing that I could think is that the manager was worried about getting upstaged and the fact that there was an employee that was actually doing more and probably better work than him and didn't want the higher ups to think he was lazy. Either way, he got exactly what he deserved and was served a delicious bit of malicious compliance. And yeah, that's right, we now rhyme on this channel as well. That is that for today's episode of Malicious Compliance. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the like button down below, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. If you've got the time, it would mean the world to me if you would watch one of the videos that are on your screen right now. They've been hand selected for you and I can guarantee it will give you some entertainment and a laugh. Otherwise though, thank you again for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video. Bye.